Season 4, for the most part, has changed the Vanguard meta, and if you want to dominate as a tank, this is the guide for you. From space control and peeling to dive pressure and ultimate tempo, I'm breaking down everything you need to know to master this role. Whether you're climbing the ladder or preparing for competitive play, this is the ultimate Vanguard masterclass for Marvel Rivals Season 4. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, it's one of the best ways of helping out the channel, and don't forget to hit that hype button as well. But without further ado, I hope you sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Now, this video is a little bit of a refresher course, so if you're new to tanking in Marvel Rivals, or if you're just new to the game, this is definitely the video for you. Or if you've been playing the game for a while now, maybe you want to pick up the Vanguard role for the very first time, or maybe you've been playing the Vanguard role. Whether it's from just starting out to more advanced tips and tricks, this again is also the video for you. Now, Vanguards in Marvel Rivals come in many flavors: main tanks, off tanks, dive tanks, hybrids, each shaped by the team's composition and winning conditions. While your toolkit and playstyle may shift from match to match, every tank shares the same core responsibilities, whether you want to believe it or not. Your job isn't just to be tough, it's to create space, draw attention, apply pressure, peel for your backline, and sometimes lead the charge when it's time to engage. And well, because it is a new season and a lot of players are sort of flocking to the new Vanguard Angela, or you just want to lock in Vanguards this season in general, but 1 second before you lock in that Vanguard, you need to understand the fundamentals of tanking, because without them, you're just a punching bag. Now, making space is the tank's #1 job. Here's a secret: tanking isn't about face tanking damage until you drop. The real skill is making space. This is what separates playmakers from targets. Making space means fighting on your terms, not the enemy's. It means forcing enemies off key, high ground, dictating where fights happen, and opening up breathing room for your teammates. You want to keep in mind that a great tank doesn't just play the fight, they shape it. Now, you might be wondering, what does making space actually mean? At its core, making space is about creating room for your team while stripping options away from the enemy. You accomplish this through sharp positioning, constant movement, and decisive aggression that forces them to react to you instead of the other way around. But in my opinion, there's a much more deeper meaning to this. There's both a physical and psychological space. For the physical space, it's the obvious one: zones of the map you control, angles you deny, choke points you lock down, and if you're holding a doorway or a high ground, the enemy literally can't go there without risking punishment. Then there's the psychological factor. It's much more sneakier, but it's just as important. And in simpler terms, it's the threat you represent. The fear of a dive, the pressure of a flank, the hesitation you create just by being there. A confident tank gets inside the enemy's head. They whiff shots, miss time heals, and give up ground before the fight even starts. When you project your presence, you tilt the tempo of the game in your favor. And when you master both the psychological and physical space, you unlock your team's potential while suffocating the enemy's options. Now that you know what taking space means, let's talk about how tanks will make space. Now, when it comes to how tanks make space, the methods vary by tank archetype and team composition, but the goal is always the same: force the enemy to play your game. And in my opinion, there's 5 different ways of making space. The first way is aggressive engagements or dive pressure. If you're running a dive composition, you make space by diving deep into the enemy's backline. Heroes like Venom, Captain America, Hulk, even Angela excel at this, disrupting supports, scattering the enemy, and creating pure chaos. The second way is frontline control or zone denial. These, in my opinion, are your classic anchors like Magneto or Doctor Strange. They create space by planting their feet and holding the ground. They essentially are saying, "This is ours, take it if you dare." They don't dive, they don't go for super deep engagements, they dictate. They create space by essentially being the immovable walls. The enemy can't necessarily take space if you have a Magneto or a Doctor Strange holding up their shield right in front of you. The third one is choke point control. Some tanks dominate by controlling doors, corridors, and even high ground. A character like Penny Parker is a good example of this. If there's a super small choke or a corridor, Penny Parker can really capitalize on all that space. Or even a character like Root thrive here, blocking pathways with shields or terrain or sheer presence. By cutting off easy routes, they funnel enemies into bad fights. You're essentially setting up a kill box. You also have tanks that break enemy formations. Other tanks specialize in disruptions. Character like Thor, Emma Frost, Groot, Thing, Angela, they can knock down, knock back, root, or displace targets. Forcing a squishy hero out of position is one of the fastest ways to turn space into eliminations. Then we come to zone threatening or psychological pressure. Again, I slightly mentioned this previously. Sometimes you don't even need to swing first. You don't need to poke at the enemies. You don't need to walk at the enemies. Holding some piece of high ground or lurking on an off angle can force the enemy to respect you. Your potential is enough to lock down parts of this map. Think Obi-Wan versus Anakin. You don't need to strike, you just need to own the high ground. That presence alone will really force enemies of where to walk to, and believe it or not, this is actually quite effective. And if you're looking for something also quite effective, you should check out today's sponsor, Control. And I'm excited to share that this video is sponsored by Control, a delicious protein-packed snack or just a tasty way to fuel your day. Control has you covered. And personally, I'm all about their peanut butter pieces cookies. Seriously, they taste amazing and they fit perfectly into my daily routine. Whether it's a quick shake in the morning or a protein-packed snack in the afternoon, Control's products are both macro-friendly and ridiculously tasty. And now they've got two new must-try products. First off is their Monster Cookie, a soft-baked protein cookie loaded with white and milk chocolate chips plus crushed cookie pieces, and it tastes ridiculously amazing. And if you're more of a protein shake friend, they have a Paradise Potion Shake. It's a refreshing mix of sweet coconut and tart pineapple blended into and it's honestly fantastic. Now, Control's snacks and shakes are designed to fuel active lifestyles, whether you're hitting the gym, gaming for hours, or just need a convenient, nutritious option. If you're looking for your next go-to protein shake, check out Control's website using the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. And don't forget, use code DUCK at checkout to save 10% on order. But anyways, back to the video. Okay, cool, but why does this actually matter? Here's the deal. Making space is what unlocks your team's potential. Without it, every role is suffocated or not significant. The first reason is quite obvious. It enables your DPS or duelists to get more eliminations. Damage dealers thrive on freedom. If you're not creating space, your duelists and pokers are stuck playing scared. They can't take off angles, they can't chase down low health targets, and they definitely can't capitalize on openings. But once you've carved out room, suddenly they're free to move, free to aim, and free to follow up without worrying about it being flanked every single second. But it's not just DPS. Your space also keeps your strategists alive. Supports and utility heroes need safe zones to operate from. Without space, they're constantly exposed, always scrambling for cover, and way easier to pick off. With proper space making, you're shielding them from pressure, peeling threats, and letting them focus on doing their own jobs, healing, buffing, setting up combos, and when your supports survive longer, everyone essentially survives longer as well, and that's a win-win scenario. Now, if I got $1 for the amount of times I've seen Vanguards fail to take space, leaving their strategists boxed into tiny corners, I would quite literally be a millionaire. Because when you don't take that space, what happens? They get jumped on, ulted, and erased. When you don't create space, you don't just lose positioning, you lose the backbone and the essence of your team. But wait, there's more. Space also forces mistakes from the enemy. When you're applying pressure and denying ground, the enemy starts to crack. They panic, they split up, they burn cooldowns too early, or walk straight into bad angles. A cornered enemy is a vulnerable enemy, and the only place they're going after that is the respawn screen. And finally, making space lets you control the tempo. Tanks set the rhythm of the match. They decide where fights happen, when they start, and how the enemy has to respond. So whether you're anchoring a frontline or diving deep into the backline, you are shaping the battlefield. 98% of the time, it's the tank who initiates first, paving the way for duelists and strategists to follow. Of course, there are exceptions. Maybe a duelist or a strategist has a game-changing ultimate they use to kick off the fight, but the majority of the time, it's the tank who pulls the trigger. When a tank makes space efficiently and effectively, the whole team suddenly looks a lot sharper. Fights flow smoother, eliminations come easier, and your squad feels unstoppable, but when tanks don't make space, everything becomes an uphill battle. Even if everyone's trying their best, it feels like the team is running into a wall every single fight. So let's talk about the traps that tanks fall into. Because trust me, most players think they're making space when really they're just existing on the map. The first and most common mistake is being too passive. If you're just standing there soaking bullets, you're not creating space, you are just a damage sponge, and a damage sponge doesn't win games. Space isn't something the enemy politely hands over, it's something you take. If you're not stepping forward, contesting angles, or pressuring their positions, you've already lost the battle for space. The enemy owns the map, and when they own the map, they own the fight. Here's the reality. Tanks who sit back, hand the initiative to the enemy, and that's the fastest way to lose. If you ever feel like you're being too cautious or your teammates are literally pinging you or yelling at you to walk up, that's your cue to step forward. Hold that W key, challenge the sightlines, force the enemy to back up or blow cooldowns. A tank who hesitates lets their team get boxed in, but a tank who commits creates openings that ripple through the entire fight. I can't tell you how many times I've coached Vanguard players who refuse to take the first step forward, and 9 times out of 10, when they stay passive, they lost. But the moment they started walking up, contesting space, and applying pressure, suddenly the fights flipped. Suddenly the team looked unstoppable. That's the difference between a tank and a target, and that is the biggest and most common mistake you see in taking this concept. Now let's talk about our next concept, which is managing attention, which is the key, in my opinion, to great tanking. Tanking isn't just about soaking damage or standing on the front line, it's about controlling what the enemy team sees, what they focus, and where their firepower goes. A great tank manipulates enemy attention like a conductor dictating an orchestra. You decide who they are aiming at, what they are afraid of, and how much pressure they feel in the middle of a fight. When you manage attention correctly, the enemy gets distracted, your DPS and supports get breathing room, and your team dictates the flow of the battle. When you manage it poorly, your teammates are left exposed while you are ignored, and that's a recipe for disaster. So let's talk about why attention management actually matters. It does 3 different things in my opinion. It creates opening, it buys time, and it controls the tempo. For it creating an opening, by drawing enemy focus, you distract high-value targets like duelists or strategists. That distraction opens windows for your duelists to hit flanks, for supports to safely channel heals, or for combos to fully land. When it comes to buying time, while the enemy is fixated on you, your team can reposition, rotate cooldowns, or execute plays. That Spider-Man swinging into their backline, that Psylocke slipping around a corner, they only succeed because you've got the enemy looking the wrong way. Lastly, it controls the tempo. Tanks who demand attention dictate the rhythm of fights. Instead of reacting, your team gets to act first. You force enemies to respond to you, which keeps them off balance and makes their plays less coordinated. So how do tanks manage attention? Well, attention doesn't magically fall into your lap. You have to earn it. So here's how. First, you need to be a threat. Enemies naturally focus on what endangers them the most. If you're dangerous, disruptive, or impossible to ignore, you'll automatically draw their eyes. Dive tanks like Venom, Hulk, Thor, Angela, Captain America thrive here. If they're ignored, they rip through the backline. Even Emma Frost and a Thing fit into this role, forcing enemies to either deal with them or watch the supports get deleted. The second way is being disruptive. Attention isn't always about damage, it's about annoyance. Tanks like Magneto, Groot, or any other character that excel at displacement and zone control. Most of these tanks have some sort of disruption tools that breaks enemy focus, forcing them to respond to you instead of your team's real threats. And lastly, it's all about controlling sightlines and, well, body language. Sometimes you don't necessarily need to press a single ability. Just standing in the right spot can bend attention. Holding a wide sightline makes you an obvious target. Sitting on a flank forces enemies to keep tabs on you. Even honestly, weaving in and out of cover taxes their mental bandwidth. Positioning tells a story, and if you are visible, aggressive, and moving with a purpose, the enemy will start playing around you. That being said, the real mastery is knowing when to take attention and when to redirect it. You want to take attention when your team needs time, safety, or some sort of setup. You want to step into the sightlines, burn defensive cooldowns, or dive aggressively to soak pressure. You're shielding with your presence, not just your abilities. Versus when you come to redirect attention, when your team is about to strike, reposition, bait enemies into a corner, or pull them toward you, just as your duelist hits a flank or your support drops a game-changing ultimate. Now, high-level tanks know how to switch between these 2 modes. Sometimes you're the spotlight, drawing all eyes, taking all the hits. Sometimes you dim the lights on yourself so your teammates can shine, but no matter what, you're always the one controlling where the enemy's eyes go. And honestly, that's the truth about tanking. Great tanks don't just absorb attention, they honestly weaponize it. Now let's talk about the power of peeling. Peeling is one of the most important yet most overlooked skills in a tank's arsenal. A lot of players think being a tank means charging forward, soaking damage, and brute force space making. And yes, this part of the job is certainly true, but a truly elite tank or a master of the Vanguard role knows that tanking isn't only about pushing, it's all also about protecting. Controlling the battlefield means knowing when to advance and when to turn back to shield your team. So what exactly is peeling? Well, peeling is the act of defending your backline from threats. It means intercepting flankers and divers like Psylocke, Iron Fist, Spider-Man, or other duelists before they shred your support line. It means disrupting assassins mid-dive, body blocking their combos, or crowd controlling them so your healers can escape. In other words, peeling isn't just about absorbing damage, it's about intercepting danger before it becomes lethal. You are the safety net that keeps your team's most vulnerable players, well, alive. So let's talk about why peeling matters. A tank who peels well changes fights without ever appearing on the kill feed. Here is why it's impactful. It buys time. A few seconds of peel gives your healers space to self-heal or stabilize the team. It creates resets, your DPS can reposition or recover instead of being forced out of the fight, and it also shuts down enemy plays. A perfectly timed peel can turn what looks like a clean dive into a complete failure. And here's the irony, in Marvel Rivals, very few players actually peel well. It's a lost art that separates good tanks from great ones. So when exactly should you peel? When a teammate gets isolated or dove, when your backline is collapsing under pressure, and when the enemy swaps into a burst type comp. When your team needs to stabilize mid-fight instead of charging forward. Sometimes the best play isn't pushing in, it's turning around and being the shield your team desperately needs. Honestly, sometimes the best play isn't pushing in, it's turning around and being the shield your team so desperately needs. And peeling doesn't mean playing passive, it means controlling the entire fight, not just the front line. Personally, I check my backline constantly, quick 180s every few seconds. I'll look, is my strategist getting dove? Are my long-range duelists under threat? If not, I snap back to the front line. If yes, I'm instantly going to peel. Because here's the truth. In Marvel Rivals, teammates often don't communicate threats. Your supports won't always call dives. Your duelists won't always ping flankers. That means it's your responsibility to track both the front and the back at the same time. Here's the next layer. Peeling isn't only about blocking damage, it's about punishing the attacker. If Psylocke dives your backline and you slam her with any crowd control ability, the moment she lands, suddenly she's the one under pressure. Or if an Iron Fist tries to burst down your healer, but your counter dive with your cooldowns, he's forced to retreat or even get eliminated. Even enemy tanks try to brute force into your supports, can be isolated, disrupted, and get punished. This flips the script. Instead of your team being victims of a dive, you weaponize the regression against them. And here's the beauty. Once enemies realize every dive attempt they get punished, hesitation creeps in. Divers second guess themselves, supports play more cautiously, your team breathes easier. Peeling isn't just about protection, it's about deference. You send a clear message, you dive, you die. With that being said, there are common peeling mistakes. Of course, like anything in tanking, peeling can go wrong. Here are the most common mistakes I see. The first one being tunnel visioning. Staring down the front line while your supports get deleted behind you. You want to break this habit with frequent 180 checks. Awareness is everything. Doing these 180 checks also tells you where to position as a tank. If you're too far from your supports, then well, you need to back up. If they're close enough, then you can push ahead. Now, there is something called over-peeling in my opinion, sitting in the backline too long. If you babysit non-stop, the enemy frontline will bulldoze your team, so you want to balance pressure with protection. Another thing is you're not tracking proper threats. If you're not keeping tabs on divers like Psylocke or burst duelists like Iron Fist, even characters like a Star-Lord as well, you'll always react too late. You want to use the ping system, and it's honestly an underrated mechanic in the game, but is extremely crucial. And lastly, blowing cooldowns too early. Peeling is about timing. A Magneto Bubble, Groot Wall, Strange Shield, or Emma Frost Spirit can stop a dive cold, but only if you save it for the right moment. Use them too early and it's free food for the divers. The key is balance. Great tanks know when to push forward to pressure space and when to swing back to shield teammates. The constant shifting aggression into protection then back again is what separates a basic bruiser from a true Vanguard leader. One final note about peeling is that it isn't glamorous. You won't always top the scoreboard, but it is one of the most impactful skills a tank can master. Peeling wins fights before they even start, and when you combine it with space making, attention control, and tempo setting, you are not just a tank. You are the reason your team is going to be winning a majority of the matches. Now let's wrap this video up with talking about controlling the tempo of the battle. One of the most powerful tools in a tank's toolkit, well, is controlling the tempo of battle. You're not just a shield, you're not just a body soaking up damage. As a tank, you are the field general in quotations. You are the one who decides when the fight starts, where it happens, and how it plays out. Great tanks don't sit back and wait for the perfect opportunity. they honestly create it. They read the flow of the game, recognize openings, and then pull the trigger on their terms. But why does forcing fights matter so much? Well, first, it breaks stalemates. A well-timed engage cracks through drawn-out neutral fights and forces the enemy to really move. Then it disrupts formations. Formations are simply where enemies set up, close range, high ground, spread wide. By diving or initiating first, you throw their spacing into chaos. And it tilts momentum. A proactive engage flips the tempo into your team's favor. Instead of reacting to the enemy, you make them react to you. This difference between waiting and creating is the gap between being a participant and being a game changer. So what exactly is the art of forcing fights? Well, forcing fights isn't about brainlessly charging in, it's about striking at the right moment. Elite tanks look for conditions like team readiness. Your allies have their key cooldowns in Ultimates Online, whether it's an Adam Warlock with a soul bond so you can soul bond and run into the enemy, or if it's a Luna ult or any type of ult that would grant you momentum. Then you have to look at enemy vulnerability. The enemy is split, repositioning, or missing critical tools. Whether that's Loki using his regeneration domain early, Adam Warlock again using his soul bond early, or any other massive cooldowns gone out of the fight. Then you have something I like to call pressure windows. You have already pushed angles, denied ground, or burned enemy resources, creating an opening. When you time engages around these factors, you dictate the pace, and the enemy is always playing catch up. Now, too many tanks hesitate, waiting for a perfect moment that never honestly comes. The truth is, great tanks set the tempo. They lead with confidence, create chaos, and open paths for their team to dominate it. If you want to be the kind of tank that wins games instead of just filling a role, you have to lead the charge both physically and strategically. So what are the common mistakes when forcing fights? Now, of course, with great responsibility comes common pitfalls. So here are the biggest mistakes tanks make when trying to control tempo. The first one is engaging without your team. Diving in before your allies are ready turns a good engage into a wasted opportunity or a free elimination. You always want to sync their positionings and cooldowns. Next, forcing fights in the wrong location. Where you fight is just as important as when. Engaging the open ground exposes your supports. Instead, you want to look for high grounds, corners, or chokes that give your team cover and angles. Because you have to remember, this is a team game, and you're not just playing for yourself, especially when you're playing a Vanguard. Then you have to look at overextending. Seeing a juicy backline target and charging in alone is tempting, but even the tankiest heroes can't survive a 1v6. If you don't have backup, you're just donating ult charge. Another big factor is ignoring ultimate economy. This is huge. If your team has no ults but the enemy is fully loaded, you are setting up a disaster. You want to learn to track ultimate rotations. Personally, I press tab after the first fight to gauge ult status. If my strategists have ults, chances are the enemy strategists do too, especially after a stalemate. And engaging blindly without this knowledge is honestly just throwing. Then there's always the hesitation factor. A half-hearted dive is worse than no dive at all. If you hesitate, your team won't follow, and the enemy team won't respect it. When you decide to engage, commit fully. Either you are in with a purpose or you're holding to bait cooldowns. With all of that being said, what are our closing thoughts? Well, when it comes to being a tank, controlling tempo is the essence of tank leadership. You are the rhythm of the fight, the heartbeat of the team. When you engage with confidence, set the pace, and balance aggression with awareness, your entire squad or entire team plays sharper. Yes, tanks get buffed. They get nerfed, and new heroes like Emma Frost, Angela enter the meta. But these fundamentals never change. Make space, manage attention, peel for your team, and control the tempo. Master these, and you're not just a Vanguard, you're the reason your team is going to be winning games much more. And that's it. Those are the fundamentals that separate average tanks from the true Vanguard players. If you found this guide helpful in any way, shape, or form, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and share it with your teammates so they stop blaming supports and start learning how to tank properly. I've got a ton more deep dive guides on the way covering duelist counterplay, advanced strategy tips, and full Season 4 meta breakdowns, so you don't want to miss those. But regardless, I hope you have a great and safe day, and I'll catch you in the next one.